going to record this. So I'll remember for next year. I actually do have a few new jokes and a few old jokes. I even brought my cheat sheet here. But I did used to be somebody, and as Diane always tells me, I'm still somebody. You know, they asked me if I missed being mayor. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. They asked me if I missed being mayor. I said, being mayor is like hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. It feels good when you stop. And I was a mayor, but my uncle was a magician. Every time he walked down the street, he turned into a bar. Now, Susie gave me a riddle that I told on the radio. What do you call a chameleon that can't change colors? A reptile dysfunction. The doctor actually said I'm very healthy, by the way. He said my cholesterol is higher than my SATs. You know, last year when Diane introduced me, she introduced me as a model mayor. So I looked up the word model in the dictionary. It said a small imitation of the real thing. Then she introduced me as a warm mayor. I looked up the word warm in the dictionary. It said not so hot. I'm here with my beautiful wife and partner, Susie. We're married 25 happy years, 24 for her, 1 for me. Most of you know that Susie's Jewish and I'm Catholic, so our wedding song was Oy Vey Maria. And I have a beautiful mother-in-law who's 91, Fern. And remember this to the fellas, behind every successful man is a very surprised mother-in-law. Although my mother-in-law thinks the world of me, I have to say that. But Catherine, I don't know if Catherine left already, but she was reminding me that we grew up in Manuka. Manuka, for those of you who don't know, is an Indian word meaning place where settlers vote twice. As a matter of fact, when I die, I want to be buried in Manuka so I could remain active in politics. I went to school at East Stroudsburg University, and one of my new friends here is friends with my old roommate, Walt DeLander. But at East Stroudsburg University, I was the goodest student in the class. In fact, my senior year was 3 of the happiest years of my life. My mom and dad said, God bless our Jimmy. He finished college in only 2 terms, Reagan's and Bush's. But you know, before I saw a fellow walking in with his grandson, and I overheard the conversation. The grandson said, Grandpa, make a noise like a frog. He said, make a noise like a frog? Why on earth do you want me to make a noise like a frog? The kid said, because last night I heard Grandma say, as soon as Grandpa croaks, we're all going to Disney World. Here's a new joke. Here's a new joke that I never told before, but it was about when I was walking down the street last week, and I saw this grizzly old man sitting in a rocking chair on a porch. Oh God, he looked ancient. And but he had a big smile on his face. I said, oh, you look very happy. He said, oh yes. I said, well, what's the secret to your longevity? He said, oh, I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I drink a quart of whiskey a week. I eat a lot of fatty foods, and I don't exercise. I said, that's remarkable. I said, how old are you? He said, 36. Here's another riddle. If the mayor and city council got up on top of the Empire State Building and they jumped off at the same time, who would hit the ground first? Who cares? And then I heard 3 kids arguing about whose dad was the fastest. The first kid said, my dad's the fastest. He could shoot a bow and arrow and get to the target before the arrow hits it. The second kid said, no, my dad's the fastest. He could shoot a gun and get to the target before the bullet gets there. Third kid said, no, my dad's the fastest. He works for the government. Quitting time's 4 o'clock. He's home every day by noon. That's fast. You know, I'm so thrilled that Sherry is the new director. But you know what? I have to say this. Not many people know this. But I was up for the job, too. It was either going to be Sherry or me. And Diane said, Jimmy, the board wants me to give you a test to see who's the smartest, you or Sherry. So Diane brought us into her office and she gave Sherry a pencil and paper, gave me a pencil and paper, and she asked us 10 questions. And I thought I did great in that test. Well, wouldn't you know, Diane called me up the next day. She said, you know, Jimmy, you did very well in that test. You got 9 questions right and only 1 wrong. And Sherry got 9 questions right and only 1 wrong. But we're going to make Sherry the director. I said, well, that's not fair. I got just as many right as she did. Diane said, no, it has to do with the question that you both got wrong. For question number 5, Sherry wrote down, I don't know. And you wrote down, neither do I. That's my favorite joke.
See, we have a connection.
Here's an interesting story. Before I knew Susie, I happened to be out in Las Vegas. I was a single guy. I thought I was pretty sharp. And I happened to be sitting down next to a beautiful Las Vegas showgirl. So I thought I'd show her some of my moves, you know? So I said, you're a very beautiful woman. She said, oh, well, thank you very much, sir. I said, you must know a lot about men. She said, I know everything about men. And I said, well, I've often been curious. Which ethnic group is the sexiest, the most romantic, the most macho? I was hoping she'd say the Irish. She said, oh, no question in my mind, sir. That would be Native Americans, American Indians. They're the sexiest. Well, I was a little disappointed, but I thought I'd press on. I said, well, what's the second group that's the most macho, the most romantic, the sexiest? Again, I was hoping she'd say the Irish. She said, oh, no question in my mind, sir. That would be Jewish men. American Indians first, Jewish men second. She said, by the way, sir, what's your name? And I said, Tonto Schwartz. I'm getting more kick out of myself. You know, I don't know if you know this, but the devil came back to earth and he showed up at the cathedral. And everybody ran out of the church in fear, except one little old man standing in the back of the church like this. And the devil came walking down the aisle toward him and he said, hey, you, don't you know who I am? The little old man said, yeah, I know who you are. And the devil said, well, how come you're not afraid of me? He said, why should I be afraid of you? I've been married to your sister for 50 years. Now, speaking of church, when the mall was really roaring, and hopefully it'll come back, I was over there with Monsignor Quinn, and there was a pet shop there. And I said to him, you know, that parrot has been there for 2 years now. It's a beautiful parrot, and they haven't sold it. So we went into the shop, and I said to the owner, I said, how come you can't sell this parrot? And just then, the parrot let out a string of obscenities. He said, that's why we can't sell the parrot. It curses like crazy. And Monsignor Quinn said, well, you know, over in the rectory, we have 2 parrots, Peter and Paul, and they're very holy parrots. All they do all day long is pray the rosary and watch Catholic television. We'll bring Polly over, she'll spend a little time with Peter and Paul, she'll get religion, and then you'll be able to sell her. So over we go, and there's Peter and Paul praying the rosary in the cages. And Polly takes one look at them and she says, how you doing, fellas? My name is Polly. Do you want to fool around? And the one parrot looked at the other one and said, throw away the beads, Pete. Our prayers have been answered. That's a good one. Here's one about Tommy Barrett's bar in Manuka, Joyce's bar. Catherine, you know where that is.
I do.
And this fellow from Ireland came into the bar one day, and he sat down, and Tommy was the bartender, and he ordered 3 beers. And he drank the 3 beers, and then he ordered 3 more beers, and he drank them. And he did this every day for about a week. And then finally Tommy said to him, "Sir," he said, "I'm very curious. Why do you buy 3 beers at a time?" And the fella said, "Oh, Tommy, you know, my brothers Pat and Mike are back in Ireland, and I'm lonesome for them, and I told them when I came over to America, whenever I would have a beer, I would have a beer on them." And Tommy said, "Oh, isn't that so sweet, just like the Irish?" Well, wouldn't you know, he comes in the next day, and he only orders 2 beers and drinks them, and then he orders 2 more and drinks them. And Tommy said, "Sir, I'm a little worried. Did something happen to one of your brothers, Pat or Mike, that you're only ordering 2 beers at a time?" He said, "Oh, no, Tommy." He said, "I quit drinking." Now, here's one. I don't know if you know this, but I'm an ice fisherman. And this winter, I went out ice fishing. And I cut a hole in the ice, and I dropped the line down, and all of a sudden, I heard this awesome voice from up above that said, "There's no fish there." And I was, oh my goodness, I was scared. And I looked around, I didn't see anything, so I moved over a little farther. I cut another hole in the ice, and I dropped the line down, and again I heard, "There's no fish there." So now I'm trembling, and I said, "Is that you, God?" And the voice said, "No, it's the rink manager." That's a good one. Now here's one. Last summer, I was walking down the street and I saw a sign in the yard. It wasn't a political sign. It said, "Talking dog for sale, $10. And I thought, well, that's remarkable. So I went and I knocked on the door. I said, "Sir, you have a talking dog and you're selling him for $10? He said, "Yeah, he's a talking dog. He's right around the back in his coop. Why don't you go out and have a conversation with him?" Well, I thought, this is odd. So I went out back, and there was the dog, and the dog said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing fine. How are you doing?" He said, "I don't know if you know too much about me, but I'm quite a hero." He said, "When I was just a puppy, the house caught on fire. I ran in the house. I dialed the fire department. They came, and they saved everybody." I said, "That's remarkable." He said, "Then when I got older, the CIA recruited me, and I helped them settle the Cuban Missile Crisis." I said, "That is amazing." So I thought, I've got to have this dog. So I walked around to the front of the house, and I said to the owner, "I want that dog. Here's your $10. But I said, I'm very curious. Why on earth would you sell a talking dog for $10? He said, "'Cause he's a liar. You can't believe a word he says." That's the first time I ever told that. I saw a bulletin before that said senior citizens knows more about AIDS than anybody else. They know about hearing aids, Band-Aids, and roll aids. Here's a story that I heard a while back. This fellow was in intensive care in the hospital, and things didn't look good, and he was lying in bed. And his wife said, "Now, honey, just relax. Everything will be all right. Go in peace." He said, "No, I can't." He said, "I have a confession to make. I had an affair with your best friend." She said, "Honey, don't you think I knew that? Why do you think I poisoned you?" So I don't know if you ever heard this story, but I was down the mall one day a couple of years ago, and I ran into Mrs. Jones from the Scranton Women's Association. And she said, "Oh, Mayor, I'm so glad I ran into you. The women want you to come and speak at our next function." I said, "Well, certainly I'll come and speak. What do you want me to talk about? Taxes, the mall, the police force?" "No, the women heard that. We want to get your views on sex." I said, "You want to get my views on sex?" So I said, well, okay. So anyway, I went home that day, and I was telling Susie that I had a speaking engagement, and she said, well, what are you going to talk about? Well, I didn't want to tell her sex, you know. I didn't want her to get jealous, you know. So I said, they want me to talk about sailing. Sailing. She said, sailing? Well, that's strange. Well, so I went to the event, and I gave my speech on sex. I thought I was very good. Well, anyway, the next day, Susie runs into Mrs. Jones in the mall. And she said, Mrs. Jones, I'm very curious. How did my husband's speech go? She said, oh, Susie, what a man. It was a fantastic speech. And Susie said, well, you know, I'm very surprised because he's only ever done it twice in his life. She said, the first time he got sick to his stomach, and the second time he lost his hat. Here's my last joke. This lady the elderly woman got picked up for shoplifting at Geretti's. And they brought her before the judge. And the judge said, may I ask what it was that you took? Yes, Your Honor, I took a can of peaches. He said, well, how many peaches were in the can? She said 6. There were 6 peaches in the can. He said, well, I'm going to give you 1 day in jail for each peach. And just then her husband stood up in the back of the room and said, she also stole a can of peas. So that's it. Thank you so much. The real message I want to give, and Sherry gave it, and Diane gave it, is we are so grateful to you, the volunteers, for all you do for the people of northeastern Pennsylvania. Because we couldn't do it without you, without the volunteers. There's just not enough money and not enough staff to get the job done. So we need people to reach out the way you do. So I just want to say God bless you, and I will pray for each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I better turn this off now.
Yeah, because I don't want to be taped.
Diane doesn't want to be taped. Thank you for listening.